83 seconds. That is how long the silence lasted. 83 seconds of nothing. No words. No defense. No explanation. Just the low hum of the air conditioning and the barely audible scratch of a pen somewhere in the back row. Kash Patel sat behind the witness table, his hands folded in front of him, and for 83 seconds, the most powerful intelligence official in the country could not produce a single syllable. The camera caught everything. The slow blink, the slight tremor in his left hand. The way his eyes drifted to his attorney, searching for a lifeline that never came. This is the story of how that silence happened, what led to it, and why it may be the most damning 83 seconds ever recorded in a congressional hearing room. It started 6 months before the hearing. A classified memo, originally marked for restricted distribution only, surfaced in a national newspaper. Not a summary. Not a paraphrase. The actual document, word for word, printed on the front page for the entire world to read. The memo contained operational details about an ongoing surveillance program, the kind of details that, once exposed, could compromise active sources in at least 3 foreign countries. Within 48 hours of publication, 2 allied intelligence agencies formally suspended information sharing agreements. Assets in the field went dark. Years of carefully built networks evaporated overnight, and the question that consumed Washington was simple. Who leaked it? The investigation began quietly. Internal reviews. Polygraph examinations. Access logs pulled from secure facilities. The classified memo had been distributed to a very small circle, fewer than 24 individuals across multiple agencies. But one name kept appearing at the center of every trail. Kash Patel. Not because he had the strongest motive. Not because anyone saw him hand a document to a reporter, but because the digital footprint told a story that was almost impossible to explain away. And Adam Schiff, a former prosecutor who had spent years in a courtroom before entering politics, saw that story more clearly than anyone. Adam Schiff had requested this hearing for weeks. There had been resistance, delays, procedural objections from the other side of the aisle. But when the access logs were finally declassified and made available to the committee, the resistance collapsed. The evidence was too significant to ignore. And so, on a Tuesday morning in early spring, Kash Patel was summoned to appear before the Intelligence Committee under oath. The hearing room was packed, every seat filled. Reporters lined the walls, cameras positioned at every angle. Kash Patel entered through the side door at exactly 9:14 in the morning, flanked by 2 attorneys. He was wearing a dark suit and a blue tie. His posture was straight, his expression controlled. He had done this before. He had sat in this chair, in front of these microphones, and answered questions with the calm precision of a man who understood how the game was played. But today was different. Today, Adam Schiff had come with documents. The first 20 minutes were procedural. Opening statements, ground rules, the usual choreography of a congressional hearing. Kash Patel delivered his prepared remarks without incident. His voice was steady, measured, deliberate. He thanked the committee for the opportunity to address what he called mischaracterizations in the press. He expressed his deep commitment to the intelligence community, and to the men and women who serve in silence to protect the nation. It was a polished performance. And then Adam Schiff leaned into his microphone, opened a manila folder, and everything changed. Adam Schiff began with a date. Not the date the memo was published. Not the date the investigation started. A different date entirely, from 11 months earlier. He asked Kash Patel a simple question. On that date, at approximately 4:17 in the afternoon, did Kash Patel access a secure terminal on the 3rd floor of the operations building? Kash Patel paused. Then he said he could not recall the specific date without reviewing his records. Adam Schiff nodded slowly, as if he had expected exactly that answer. Then he produced a document. A printout of the electronic access log for that terminal on that date. The log showed a single entry. Kash Patel's credentials, used at 4:17 p.m., accessing a file designated with the same classification code as the leaked memo. Kash Patel shifted in his chair. He adjusted his tie. He reached for the glass of water in front of him and took a slow sip. Then he said that he accessed many classified files as part of his duties and that accessing a file did not imply any improper handling of that file. It was a reasonable answer. A prepared answer. But Adam Schiff was not finished. Adam Schiff moved to the second document. An email, sent from Kash Patel's personal device at 6:41 p.m. on the same day, approximately 2 hours and 24 minutes after the terminal access. The email was sent to an address outside the secure government network. The subject line was blank. The body of the email contained a single line of text, a sequence of numbers and letters that appeared meaningless at first glance. But the committee's technical analysts had identified the sequence as a file reference code. And the file it referenced was the classified memo. The hearing room stirred. A low murmur rippled through the gallery. The chairman called for order. Kash Patel stared at the document in front of him. His attorney leaned in and whispered something. Kash Patel nodded but did not speak. Adam Schiff waited. 7 seconds passed before Kash Patel responded. He said he did not recall sending that email and suggested that his personal device may have been compromised. Adam Schiff made no expression. He simply wrote something on his notepad and moved on. The third piece of evidence changed the temperature in the room. Adam Schiff produced a record of a wire transfer. Not a large amount. A modest transfer, made from an offshore account to a domestic account, dated 6 days after the classified memo appeared in the newspaper. The domestic account was held under a trust established 18 months prior. And the beneficial owner of that trust, according to documents obtained through a subpoena, was Kash Patel. The color drained from Kash Patel's cheeks in a way that was visible even on the overhead monitors. He looked down at the table. He looked at his attorney. He looked back at Adam Schiff. And then he said nothing. Adam Schiff repeated the question. Could Kash Patel explain the wire transfer? Could he identify the source of the funds? Could he explain why this transfer occurred less than a week after the leak? Nothing. Kash Patel opened his mouth slightly, then closed it. His attorney placed a hand on his arm. The room was silent. Not the comfortable silence of a pause between questions, but the heavy, suffocating silence of a man who has been cornered and knows it. Adam Schiff sat perfectly still, his eyes fixed on Kash Patel. He did not repeat the question a third time. He did not need to. The silence was the answer. That was when the 83 seconds began. The official transcript would later note it as a pause in testimony. But everyone in that room knew what it was. It was the moment when the carefully constructed narrative, the polished answers, the rehearsed deflections, all of it collapsed under the weight of 3 documents. A terminal access log. An email with a file reference code. A wire transfer to a trust account. Each one, on its own, might have been explained away. Together, they formed a chain that even the most skilled attorney could not break in real time. At the 42nd second, Kash Patel reached for his water glass again. His hand was shaking. Not violently, but enough that the water trembled visibly in the glass. He brought it to his lips but did not drink. He simply held it there for a moment, as if the act of holding something solid could anchor him to a reality that was slipping away. Then he set the glass down with a faint clink that echoed in the quiet room. At the 58th second, his attorney whispered to him again, longer this time, more urgent. Kash Patel shook his head slightly. At the 71st second, he straightened his papers, aligning the edges with mechanical precision, the kind of mindless physical activity that people resort to when their brain is overwhelmed. At the 79th second, a single bead of sweat appeared at his temple. It caught the light from the overhead fluorescence and traced a slow path down the side of his face. He did not wipe it away. At the 83rd second, Adam Schiff spoke. He did not raise his voice. He said, very quietly, that he would note for the record that the witness had declined to answer the question. Then he moved on. But he did not move on to a new topic. He moved deeper. The next line of questioning concerned the deleted files. Internal investigators had discovered that on the evening before Kash Patel's first interview with the Inspector General, a series of files had been permanently deleted from a secondary server. The deletion had been performed using a method designed to prevent recovery, a systematic overwrite that required specific technical knowledge. The server logs showed that the deletion command was executed at 11:22 p.m. Kash Patel's building access card had been used to enter the facility at 10:47 p.m. that same night and to exit at 11:51 p.m. Schiff laid out these facts one by one, like a mason laying bricks. Date. Time. Access record. Deletion log. He did not editorialize. He did not accuse. He simply placed each fact on the table and let them accumulate. And with each new fact, Kash Patel seemed to shrink slightly in his chair. His posture had gradually curved. His shoulders had drawn inward. His voice, when he did speak, had lost its earlier resonance and had become thin, careful, as if each word was being weighed on a scale before it was released. Kash Patel's response was that he had no knowledge of any deletion and that many personnel had access to that server. Schiff asked if Kash Patel was aware of any other personnel who had accessed the building at that hour on that specific night. Kash Patel said he was not. Schiff asked if Kash Patel had any explanation for why his access card was used to enter the building on the night before his interview with the Inspector General. Kash Patel said he sometimes worked late. Schiff asked if he had a specific recollection of what he worked on that night. Kash Patel said he could not recall. Could not recall. The phrase hung in the air like smoke. Schiff let it linger. He leaned back in his chair, removed his reading glasses, and cleaned them slowly with the edge of his tie. It was a deliberate gesture, the kind a seasoned trial lawyer uses to let a damaging answer sink into the minds of the jury before moving to the next question. Every second of that pause was calculated. Every second told the room that Schiff was in no hurry, that the weight of the evidence was doing the work for him. Schiff's final line of questioning was perhaps the most devastating. He produced phone records. Not the content of calls, but the metadata. The timing, duration, and recipient of calls made from Kash Patel's personal phone in the 72 hours surrounding the leak. There were 14 calls during that window. 11 were to numbers the committee had identified as routine contacts. But 3 calls were to a number that could not be traced to any known associate, any government line, or any registered entity. The first at 9:08 p.m. on the night the memo was accessed. The second at 7:14 a.m. on the following morning. The third at 4:31 p.m. on the day before the memo appeared in print. Schiff asked Kash Patel to identify the number. Kash Patel said he could not recall without reviewing his personal records. Schiff asked if Kash Patel would be willing to provide those records to the committee. Kash Patel's attorney interjected, stating they would need to review the request and consider issues of personal privacy. Schiff nodded and said he understood. Then he said something that would be replayed on every news broadcast for the next 48 hours. He said that in his experience as a prosecutor, when a witness cannot recall, cannot explain, and cannot identify, it is usually not because the answers do not exist. It is because the answers are too dangerous to speak out loud. Kash Patel did not respond. The room was silent again. Long enough for every person in that gallery to understand that this was no longer a routine oversight hearing. This was a reckoning. The hearing continued for another 90 minutes, but the outcome had already been decided. The access log, the email, the wire transfer, the deleted files, the unidentified phone number. 5 threads, each pulling at the fabric of Kash Patel's carefully maintained image, and together, they had torn it beyond repair. After the hearing adjourned, Kash Patel stood slowly from the witness table. He gathered his papers with mechanical precision. He buttoned his jacket. He nodded to his attorneys. And he walked out of the hearing room without speaking to a single reporter, without making a single statement, without looking back. The cameras followed him down the corridor, through the double doors, and into a waiting vehicle. The door closed. The vehicle pulled away. And that was the last time Kash Patel appeared in public for 11 days. In the aftermath, the question that every person who watched that hearing was forced to confront remained. How much trust do we place in the people who hold our secrets? How much power do we give to individuals who operate in the shadows, who make decisions that affect millions of lives? And what happens when those individuals betray that trust? Not in the abstract, but in a specific room, on a specific date, with specific documents laid out on a table for the world to see. The 83 seconds of silence were not just the absence of an answer. They were the sound of a system confronting its own vulnerability. They were the sound of accountability arriving, late and imperfect, but arriving nonetheless. And for the millions who watched, who saw the color drain from Kash Patel's face, who counted the seconds along with Adam Schiff, those 83 seconds asked a question that has no comfortable answer. If this is what we caught on camera, under oath, with the whole world watching, then what have we not caught? What files were deleted before anyone thought to look? What calls were made to numbers that will never be traced? The hearing ended. The committee will continue its work. But the 83 seconds are already part of the record. They cannot be deleted. They cannot be overwritten. They sit in the official transcript, a void where an answer should have been. And in that void, the truth is louder than any words Kash Patel could have spoken. Sometimes, silence tells you everything you need to know.